Just want to say an official welcome and thank you for joining us today at this PractiTest Webinar Series. I'm Anne, and I'm here to introduce Anne-Marie. Her reputation precedes her, but if you do not know her yet, Anne-Marie excels at creating spaces where quality thrives. I like that description. She's also the co-founder of Testing Times and its principal quality engineer. Also an international keynote speaker and spoken at multiple international conferences, including the Online Test Conf, the past one we had in the fall. And this is a great tiny little plug-in for me to say that you're more than welcome to join the next Online Test Conf in May, next month. And more importantly, in the context of today's session, Anne-Marie has also been teaching exploratory testing for several years and has developed the DEAR model for approaching exploratory testing in a more structured approach, which is especially useful.
Oh, there we go. You're back.
Yeah. Oh, I was out? Okay. Which is
I don't know if it was me, but I think that's me. All right. This is going to be a fun session.
I saw you. But anyway, today's model that you will be showing for a more structured approach to exploratory testing. Very useful if you're especially getting started with exploratory testing. But that's why we're all here today. So we can get to it. And you are more than welcome to take over now.
Cool. All right. So here we go.
Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Marianne. Yep. Going to give it a go. Please give me a shout. We've got a lot happening in this webinar. Okay. We're going to have some slides. We're going to go to a website and we're going to do some real live testing. And at the same time, we're going to take some notes using mind maps. And we're going to all the time be using this DEAR heuristic to help us give us some structure. So hold on to your seatbelts because this is going to be a bit of a crazy ride. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to tell you is this is the website that you're going to be testing. Now, look, I know some of you might have seen this website before, but I think it's just a really useful thing because bear in mind, what I'm trying to give you here today is a demonstration of how the DEAR heuristic works, okay, to give you a bit of structure around your exploratory testing. So, you know, even if today you're super advanced or you're an experienced exploratory tester, this is actually a great little technique exercise to help teach other people who don't particularly very strong in exploratory testing. So, I mean, I use exploratory testing for a lot of people who are not necessarily software testers. So business people who might be spending a bit of time, this might be useful for them, or people in product owners and people in that space who need to do a little bit of testing. Basically, anyone who needs to do testing who might not necessarily have a background in exploratory testing. And this gives them a little bit of a way of having to get started, because my experience with exploratory testing is one of the big stoppers is, how do I know how to start? Where do I start in all of this? Do I just start hitting the keyboard, or what do I do? What do I do? And from, you know, that could be quite an uncomfortable situation. So you want to help people as much as possible feel comfortable, get started. You want to help them indulge their curiosity, and hopefully this heuristic will help that happen and give you some notes and some structure along the way. Okay, so we're going to use this website. You're more than welcome to pop over there straight away and start playing with it. I know some of you will probably be doing that already. Just bear in mind, you might just want to take a snapshot of the screen. Bear in mind that the data does get wiped after 10 minutes or so. So if everything just disappears and you're like, what happened? I just put in 20 things there and it's all gone. That's because basically the website's been set up to clear out every 10 minutes. And that's from a security perspective to stop people overloading the system and crashing the database. So as some testers might just be tempted to give it a go, you know. So we're going to test the room administration. We're going to use mind maps, and look, pop in your questions as we go. What the hell? If you've got a question, you want a clarification, put it in. I'm sure mine will pop it up if there's enough questions there. You know, feel free to ask those questions as we go. And you know what? If you have a suggestion, I'd love to hear it. You know, have you thought about this, or have you done that? Or, you know, just feel free to pop those questions or ideas into the website. And Brian, if you could, you know, if you're getting some that you think might be useful, we'd love to hear a couple as we go along. So give that a go and let's see how that tries out.
No problem.
Right, we're off. We're off. Were we not off because my screen? Right. So let's jump in. A bit about exploratory testing, maybe from people who are not quite familiar. So look, the simplest definition of exploratory testing is text design and execution. You know, basically you design your test, you think of a test on the fly, and then you execute it. You see what happens, you observe it, and then that gives you input into your next test, right? So if you think about sort of test automation or, you know, manual testing, it's very formalized, or manual test cases. Often you write all that stuff up front and then you execute. But exploratory testing is much more fluid. It's you design, you think the test up, and then you run it, and then you see what happens, and that compels you to run another test, right? So it's kind of like you're following your nose through the system. Now, that can appear really, really, really unstructured to a lot of people, right? You're watching exploratory testing work and it's like, oh, there's absolutely chaos happening here. That person's just jumping all over the place and there doesn't seem to be any structure and they just look like they're playing around. And to some extent, there is a bit of truth in that, right? You are playing around, but someone who does exploratory testing a lot will develop a systematic way of doing things. They'll realize, they'll start observing how they actually approach a system, or they approach a mobile app, or they're approaching a website. And they'll start realizing that they actually do have a method and they do have a structure. So what has happened in exploratory testing, a lot of people have spent a lot of effort thinking up ways of observing those structures and then putting them down on paper to help other people, right? So we're going to use some of those today, and we're going to explore some of those techniques that we use to apply a little bit of structure. All right, so about structure, right? Here's our joyful Mr. Cockroach on the left-hand side. He's got an endoskeleton, he's an exoskeleton, right? And he is basically, really has an outer shell. Now, if you think of anything really formalized testing, maybe you work in medical devices, that's a classic thing, somewhere where you've got a lot of compliance and you have a very structured, formalized testing process. So if anyone looked at that outside testing process, they could point to it, right? You could point to your automated tests, or you could point to your really formalized testing process and your test results, right? So that's a very external, visible way of seeing testing. Exploratory testing is a little bit different, right? We're a bit more an endoskeleton. Our framework is on the inside, but it's harder to see, but it's actually still there, right? And so we want to explore that inside structure, bring it to the fore, and use that so we can make our exploratory testing really deep and find some really rich, exciting bugs that we can bring up and provide that information to people who matter. Okay, so this structure that we use, a lot of these structures, we call these heuristics, right? Now, there's loads and loads of definitions out there. You can go off and do your research, but honestly, I love this definition from Richard Bradshaw. They're just cognitive shortcuts. They're things in your brain to help you recognize, identify problems, to give you some sort of sense of how to go about something. So we use heuristics all the time. Some people call them a rule of thumb. You know, it's kind of like, imagine you were in a shop and you had to mentally calculate, you know, you had 3 or 4 different grocery items and you're mentally calculating how much. And you couldn't pull your phone out because, you know, your hands are full with all your groceries. And so you just mentally go, do I have enough money? And you just calculate that by rounding up. Rounding up is a heuristic. It's a method for calculating how much money you're going to need in that. It's not going to be precise, right? You know, something costs $3.95. You might say, oh, that's $4, right? So you're mentally you're rounding up the amounts in order to get a rough idea, and that works perfectly when you're in a supermarket. But it wouldn't work if you're an accountant, right? So heuristics are things that you can apply in certain contexts, but they don't always work in every situation. They're not, we say they're fallible, right? That means that, you know, at sometimes they just really don't work in that right, in the way that you would expect. So you got to kind of know what you're doing a bit with heuristics. You got to know which heuristics to pull out and when, and how to apply them, and look at them and go, no, that's not working for me right now, and be okay to drop part of it or only use part of the heuristic, right? So we're going to do that today. We're going to use, as I said, the DEAR heuristic. Now, this heuristic basically stands for 4 things: describe, explore, expand, repeat. Nice and simple, easy to remember, right? A good mnemonic. We love mnemonics, you know, easy to remember in our heads. We've got so much stuff going on. We don't want to have to think about lots and lots of deep things. So this is going to help us stick in our brain. All right. As I said, we're going to use mind maps. So I'm showing you the mind map that we're using, but we're going to describe what we see. So describe is basically really looking at what you see. And then it's kind of simple. We're just going to explore that. And once we've finished exploring that, then we're going to try and expand that using different heuristics. And then we just keep going until we run out of time. And that's it. That really is it. Well, there's a little bit more to the secret sauce, which I'm going to share with you today. Look, with a DEAR, when I say describe what you do, I think a lot of the time when we start exploratory testing, we rush into something, right? We start testing straight away. We just want to get in there. We want to find bugs. And it really can be sort of something that is quite sort of compelling to get started. I just like try and take a little step back. I know it's hard. I know it's hard because you want to see, you want to understand the system, your brain's ticking in there. It wants to know more. It wants to understand what's happening. But if you can, at this point, just take a step back and start trying to really critically observe what you're doing, or observe the system itself. What exactly is in there? What are you looking at? What can you actually document? And then document that down in a mind map. Now, it sounds so basic, but really the more that you see at this point, really the deeper you can go into your testing. So if you don't actually spend this time really observing the system, this is what I've observed over the years. If I don't spend time doing that, I tend to go, like I tend to jump down into one area only, or I tend to miss stuff. And that's okay. It's not the end of the world. I can always come back. But I have taught myself over time that this is really, really useful technique for me to just give myself a little bit of time to explore and describe what I'm seeing. All right, and then we can start exploring. Then we can start asking the questions, right? But because we've seen as much as we can, we've got a whole lots of different areas we can start asking questions to. And the typical questions that I find I'm asking is, you know, what does it do, right? If it's the first time you've actually seen the system, you're going to be asking this question, you know, what exactly does it do? I've just been handed this mobile app. I'm not sure. It's called, you know, the mental stress app. So I'm guessing it's something to do with my mental capacity, but I'm not sure. I'm going to have to explore and investigate it. So what does it do? Then, of course, you're going to start, well, what if I sign up? What if I log in? What if I do this? What if I press that button? What if I, right? This is all part of your learning process. You're trying to really start to familiarize yourself with the system, developing a mental model in your head of the system, and you're really kind of getting to understand, especially if this is your first time looking at the app. And then, of course, the tester is going to go, well, how can I make those bugs come up? How can I get them to kind of come to the surface? So, you know, and we loosely call that, what can I break, right? How can I break this system? How can I make it fail? And also, you're going to use your past experience, aren't you? Because you go, no, I've tested an app like this in the past, and I found this problem previously. I wonder if this app has the same problem, right? So you're going to your past experiences and you're looking at those and you're drawing on your wealth of experience about whether apps that you've used yourself in the past, just as a user, or apps that you've tested, right? And then you might find something, but you also might say, well, how is this used in other parts of the system, right? So I found this problem here, or I understand how it works, but how is this actually used somewhere else? Are there links to other parts of the system that I'm not aware of, and that might be useful to know? So that's kind of developing that rich mental model. And then what else can I do? Because one of the big things in exploratory testing is you get stuck, you know, and the secret is that everyone gets stuck. Everyone in exploratory testing gets stuck at some point. They don't know what to do yet. And there's a couple of things you can do when you get stuck, right? And you don't know what to do next. One is you can just stop, right? That's one option. Or you can try and kind of jolt your brain into thinking of different things. So I find it's like, what else can I do? What other things can I play around with that will help me kind of trigger my brain into finding different types of bugs? All right. But once we've explored it, we've done heaps of exploratory testing, we think we found some bugs and we're feeling pretty good about ourselves, okay? All right, we're happy, we found these bugs, but this is where we go even deeper, right? This is where we want to I find is that we've done that exploratory testing, but we want to use a different heuristic to make it deeper, right? And this is brilliant for when we get stuck. So I've done as much testing as I can possibly do. How can I actually make this deeper? How can I find bugs? Maybe I haven't found a lot of bugs at all. You know, maybe I know the system pretty well and I haven't really seen anything that's new to me. And you know, it's kind of like, I feel like I'm wasting my time here a bit. So looking at a different type of heuristic, expanding your model. Now I'll show you how I do that. And then just repeating the exercise. Now, of course, this depends on how much time you have, right? You might have 10 minutes before you need to release the software, in which case you might not get to do the R bit. But more and more, I've also realized that if you do have time, this is where you can go back and research. Now, typically, in the testing world, you are told the first thing you do when you start testing is to read the requirements, right? Or read the stories, understand what you do. You know, sometimes I actually don't do that at all. I bet heaps of testers don't do that either. Like, I purposefully don't read the requirements because I don't want to be biased by what they say it should do. I want to be biased by what it actually does. And then I'll go back and look at the requirements, and then I'll identify and say, okay, well, actually, is that what the requirements say it should do, right? It's just a subtle shift, but I find that this grounds me in what the system does. And as a tester, that's actually really, really important. So once I've done the testing, then I go back and do extra research. Is there stuff I'm missing? Is there additional information out there that I might find is really, really useful? You know, what additional stuff on Confluence, stories, whatever, talking to people, loads of different ways you can research, right? But using that information to kind of deepen your testing and then going back and starting again with that new information, with that new fresh insight that might help you find different types of bugs. Now, look, I don't know if we're going to get through all this today, but we'll give it a go. I hope, Mayan, you just got to keep an eye on the time because this is going to get a little bit crazy, right? So hold on to your horses, off we go. All right, actually, that's the end bit. We're now going to go onto the website for the demo. All right, so here we are. And as I said, you're welcome to join me online. It's automationintesting.online. You might have a big sign at the front that says, let me hack. Just click that away, hack away. The website's designed for testing purposes, so don't feel that you're going to do anything untoward. Feel free to let your imagination flow. Now, beautiful website. This is the Shady Meadows Bed and Breakfast, designed by Mark Winteringham and Richard Bradshaw. And these people have done a wonderful job of creating this site. And I find it very, very useful to use for exploratory testing. We're going to go into the admin panel. As you can see, I've been there before. If you haven't been there before, just type in admin password and you'll take you then to, on the left-hand side, to this place called Rooms. Beautiful website for creating rooms in your B&B, okay? As you can see, there's one room there already, right? Now, let's go back to the DEAR heuristic. Do you remember what we want to do? The first part of the DEAR heuristic is D, describe everything you can do, everything you can see, right? So let's look at this for a bit and let's critically think, okay, well, what are the variables on this page? What exactly are we seeing? So we've got a room number, we've got a type, okay, so that looks like it's a drop-down list with different, you know, so you can create different room types. Are they accessible? Now that's probably means, you know, that could mean wheelchair accessible, but we're not sure exactly what that means, right? But you know, that we'll take it at face value. We're not trying to be too critical here. We're just kind of getting that knowledge on into our heads. Obviously a price for the room and some room details, right? We're looking at over here. I can see an X button. I suspect that's a delete, but you know, might not be, we're not sure. And there's a create one, so we can create some more rooms here, right? Now, just for the purposes of today, I'm not going to explore the rest of the site, right? You're welcome to do that whenever you want to, but for today, we're just going to focus on this page. So what I've done here is I've actually, I'm going to show you a mind map that I have created previously. Can you see that?
No, you're going to have to switch share screen.
I did share. Okay, sharing is closed. Resume share. Doesn't like it. Let's try a new share. Let's try.
Is it on another browser or tab?
It says sharing is paused. Bring your shared window to the front, and it won't let me do that. Okay, let me just
stop for a minute and then start sharing the other screen, perhaps.
I can try that for sure. What do you see? Are you seeing now?
The double click. No, I see black. It said that you're sharing, but I don't actually.
Okay, don't worry. I will. Let me see if I can do this one. This will give you some idea. It's not perfect, but it'll give you some idea of what I'm working on. Let's see if we can have a look at this.
Perhaps share your entire desktop.
I'm just, give me a sec. I am just going to stop sharing that now. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, we can see it now.
Cool. See, there's always a way.
Yes, and I think here you
All
can,
right.
if you want to switch back, you just go to the tab, you know, to the left. And I think
thanks, Mayan. So this is in a mind map. I personally use Xmind. You're welcome to use any other mind map system. One of the reasons I love mind maps is because they're so easy to shift stuff around, and you'll see what I mean when I start. So here's one I prepared previously. All right, so here it is, just the rooms admin. And what I've done is I've basically taken every single variable on that screen and I put it into a mind map. And I put in, okay, it's an input field and it's blank. You know, the room numbers, it's got a blank, but the type has got all these different types down here, as you can see. Accessible, true, false. It looks like some sort of binary thing, but we're not sure. And so you can see here, I've just taken the time to kind of just dump everything down. It hasn't taken me a lot. Actually, you can do this by copy and paste, but it hasn't taken a lot of time, but it's a really useful map of and a layout and a place that I can start beginning my exploratory testing. All right, so sometimes it's actually useful when you're describing everything is to think about what you don't see, right? If you go back to that original here, look at all that big white space down here. That's interesting. Is that something that really should be there? Could they have done something better about the usability in this on this website? So sometimes you can think of what's missing, what's not there, and that can help you. You can jot those down too, right? Okay, so here we are. We're on our rooms admin. We've got everything mucked down. We're now going to start exploring. Here's the fun bits, right? We want to start exploring. We want to start asking questions, right? So the room number, we know it's an input field, but it's blank. Now, immediately I'm starting to think, based on my experience of input fields, what is the length? You know, does it take alphanumerics? What about different languages? Does that matter? And then once we start testing, we're going to do that in a second, we're going to get some questions, right? So as you can see, I've done a little bit of testing already. I've got some kind of questions that I've added in. I'm starting to think critically about, you know, what can it do? Can I add more rooms? Can I edit the rooms? You know, based on my previous understanding of websites, is that something you can do? Now, something that I do a lot is I go to price. Price is critical, right? Everyone, you know, can you imagine if there was a bug in pricing? Everyone would be jumping up and down. So I focus on pricing because I know that this is something that's going to matter to people, right? And for the purposes of the exercise today, we're going to look at the pricing. So let's go back. Let's try and just create a room. That's the first thing we would do. And let's be nice. Let's go, well, it's 101, so let's try 102. Let's just make it a twin just to make it fun. We'll keep it pulse. And we'll put a price. So we'll say, you know, we're not doing anything fancy here. We're just, you know, we're just clicking a few buttons and we're just going to see what happens when we create. We're kind of expecting this to work, right? We're not expecting anything to go wrong. There we go. Whoop, everyone's in. I love it. I love it. Everyone's testing away. That's fantastic. Okay, so we got interesting. We now have 2 room 102s. That's something we might want to explore, right? We might want to think about, well, is that a good idea that you can actually have 2 room numbers of the same, different prices? That might cause a bit of confusion. But anyway, we're not going there. We're focused on our pricing. And so we know sort of what to expect, and we can maybe put some of that information into our mind map if we want to, or not. It's up to us. But we're going to keep going. So maybe 103, and we're going to do the same. But now we're going to be a little bit nastier, right? We're going to think, okay, well, it's gone 100, but we still don't know a lot about this pricing, do we? Like, is it euros? Is it sterling? Is it dollars? That's something that we probably want to ask, right? So we go to our thing, and we're saying, okay, these are sorts of things that we might want to put in, right? So I'm going to give it here. You know, is it dollars? Hopefully this goes in. There we go, dollars. So what's the currency? Yeah, that's kind of important, right? So this is something I would definitely be wanting to get more research into. And why is it not there? Is there a reason why it's not being put in there? I don't want to, you know, look, it seems wrong to me, but, you know, I want to check that out. I want to find. Here's another thing. What about decimals? You know, is that? But clearly also, what are the lower and upper boundaries? As a tester, this is something I'm always interested in. I know that bugs are potentially lurking in the boundaries, right on the edges. So we want to find out exactly what the boundaries are, and we want to see if we can exploit that. So let's go back. All right, so boundaries, here we go. We know 100 goes in, but what about 1,000 or I don't know, 10,000? Let's see what happens there. Okay, we got some feedback. Yay, love feedback. So one of the good things is we're getting feedback, right? We might want to put that into our website or into our mind map, or we might not. You know, really, it might be useful information to trap because it might be wrong. Maybe it should be more than that. Maybe it should be less. What happens if I want to create, you know, a B&B that's, you know, the penthouse suite at the top of my B&B that I charge, you know, $1,500 a night for? You know, I can't do that on this booking system, right? So that might be a real problem. So, you know, that's something that might be worth saving. But for now, we're going to accept that 999 whatevers is okay. But it's good that's got feedback. That's useful for us. So immediately we can start putting that into our website. And here you go. I've cheated already. 999 is in there, but we don't know the lower one. So let's maybe just try that. Now, you would expect it to be 1 or 0, maybe. So let's just put 1 in. All right. Can't remember which one it is. There we go. There's 1. So it's accepted 1. What about, I don't know, what about -1? All right. We're trying to find here where the boundaries align. Okay. So we know it's not going to let us put it in. What about 0? Oh, I can see someone's done that already. Fantastic. Thank you, person, for putting in the 0, right? So you can see here that we're just playing around. We're trying to exploit it. We're trying to look for the vulnerabilities. We're trying to sniff around and see what we can do. And we keep filling in our mind map with all this information as we go, right? I put in here a little thing here. I don't know, letting it put 0 in as a pricing, really? You know, I don't know, it doesn't feel right to me. Is there a reason why they've done that? Not sure, okay? But I definitely would be raising this as a question. You know, why are you allowed to have a free room, essentially? And if it's going to be free, should you kind of call it free? I don't know, just seems a little bit unusual. And so something that, just based on my experience of previous websites, I'd want to kind of elevate and raise up. So you can see here, you're just building up this beautiful, rich model. As you're doing it, it's asking, do you see how it's asking you more questions as you go along, that you're starting to get some ideas about more and more questions. So just keep doing this, just you know, keep doing it, keep exploring it until you get to the point where you know what, I think I've explored this as much as possible. I've tested every single variable, I've found the boundaries, I'm really, you know, I'm feeling okay about what I've done. I've raised some bugs, and you know, some people have accepted them, and other people said, no, it's meant to be that way. And I'm like, okay, I think I've done. Is there anything more I can do? Why? Yes, there is. So let's go and have a look. So this is the next bit I call expanding. Now, it really depends where you want to go on this. This is a very, very typical way of expanding. Many of you will be familiar with the SFIDPOT. Now, look, I know everyone spells it slightly differently, just don't get hung up about it. But look, basically, some people call this the San Francisco Depot model, but this is a great model for when you want to look at a product, something from a product perspective. So, you know, if you're seeing something that maybe you're doing testing in production, something like that, where really understanding the product as a whole is vitally important, you know. This is a great model to be looking at and using it as a basis of your testing. Now, you see here, there's a structure. So S, structure, F for function, data, interface, platform, operability, and time. It's really, these are just different like triggers for you to think about. And when we talk about structure, it's about your architecture, your database. You know, are you on a cloud? Is it cloud? Is it a SaaS model? What sort of code? Does the actual type of code lend itself to particular types of bugs? Does the architecture lend itself to particular type of errors, like, for example, microservices? Do we have different kind of complexities? And maybe that will consider me to think about sort of testing in a different way, or a different ideas will pop up because I'm considering that. Now, I filled in the function bit already, but can you see how this might be useful? In particular, one of my big things when I look at this sort of stuff is the API. I just love, you know, exploring the API, and probably some of you are already in there looking at the API. Now we're running out a lot of time, so I'm going to kind of race through this a bit, but I do want to show you a few neat tricks with the assumption that you haven't actually you haven't done a lot of API testing. So we're going to go now into this model, which is called the Vader model. So you maybe say, okay, I actually want to start looking at the API in a bit more detail. So Vader is a great way of actually taking that next step from the GUI down into looking at the API level. So Vader is basically verb, authorization, data, errors, and responsiveness. Now there's a whole heap of other things you can be testing in APIs, right? So this is just a little bit of a flavor, but it's enough to kind of get things going. So the verb, loads of different options here. You've got get commands, put, post, options delete. There's other ones as well, but these kind of tend to be the most common. So we can start thinking about, maybe you could be testing all these different API commands, right? Maybe there's something we can do there. What about authorization, right? Looking at the different types of cookies, the different auth types. what is the website doing? And that whole thing in authorization, that could be a full testing. Maybe you've got a security testing to that, or maybe you don't. Maybe you need to do a little bit of this yourself. So you could start sort of exploring this space too. That might be a whole day's worth of testing just right there. Right now, I've gone to the data. I took a little bit of time just to kind of map out the data from just having looked at this before. But what I wanted to do today with you is to go back to the original website. So I'm just going to jump back here. Right, I'm going to do a refresh to see where we're at. Okay, we're back to one again. Now, what we can do here, and look, most of you are familiar with your inspect, right? So we're going to right click here, and we're going to pull up our API level, right? So we're going to go to this place called network, right? And we're going to use this to kind of look under the hood. So let me just make sure I'm all here. Okay, so I'm going to do a refresh, and now should be seeing some of the APIs that are being called from this website happening, right? We're going to start seeing some action. Yay, look, there we go. We've got 3 API calls: validate, count, and room, right? Now we're going to focus on the room here. So I just clicked on that, and we're going to have a quick look at the headers here on the left here. And we can see, okay, we've got a get, which is a 200. No surprise here. It's basically pulling from the database to say, well, what information should I be displaying? So if we look at that, it's telling you, look at that, and these are the rooms you should be looking at, right? And here's the data in that rooms. Interesting, it's supplying all that information, not necessarily all needed just for this page, right? But it's applying all this information on that one record, right? So if we go back now and did our create, and we'll just put look, let's do something different just to be, there we go, 650, woohoo, right? We create, immediately we've seen some more records come up. Now, the reason why I want to show you this is because, and most of you probably all know this is, but I really like, when I'm doing exploratory testing, I don't want to get too hung up on I'm not doing API testing, I'm doing exploratory testing, and I'm using the API to help me find bugs. And there's a subtle difference in that, right? Because a lot of the time in API testing, we're using test automation, and that makes a lot of sense to do that. But what we're doing here is slightly different angle. We're actually wanting to use the API to see if we can identify different types of bugs and explore them in different ways. Now, what I like to do here is just actually do a right click on the room, and I tend to just copy all the information. What that's doing is basically copied all that information from that API, and I whack it into Postman, something like this, where I just import it in there. And now I can play around with this, right? With this response. I can now start sending this response from Postman instead of from, there we go, we've got just a 200 here. So it's just done a GET request. That same request that we were doing in Chrome has now been translated into Postman, and now we can start exploring and doing different things. Now, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I can't go any further on this, but I hope you could kind of start seeing how we can start going a little bit deeper. We can start exploring in deeper ways. Maybe we can see a bit about some of those things. How are they actually being sent? If we look at that price, what is the price, for example? Here we go. There's the price, and there we see that value of 650 going in. But just we can start playing around with maybe doing different posts and different puts and doing different things in that space. I'm going to finish up because I think there might be time we want to have some time for some questions. So we've gone through the sort of very, very quickly gone through radar, the Vadar heuristic, but we can see how, you could look at all these different response codes and say, okay, how can I generate all those different response codes? How could I actually, is the API sending the right response codes for the right calls? And am I getting the right information back on error messages? So you can use this to start systematically going through those errors, right? To see if you can do that. And you can always use this fun status dogs, to help you, understand what all those meanings are, because I keep forgetting. But, there's some wonderful sites that help you, remind you what all those codes are and stuff. Okay, I hope your head is not dizzy still. So as I said, finally, the whole thing about it is the end is repeating, going back, doing more research. Just keep going, and really until you run out of time. And that's enough. That's all I have time for today in the Dear Heuristic. Hopefully we have some time for questions. And I'm happy to chat about this in different ways anytime. But thank you very much. I'll just hand over to Mayan now for questions.
Thank you very much for that. I learned a lot. One small question, someone put it in the chat, not in the Q&A. The answer is yes, recordings will be shared. And they were asking about the mind maps. I'm guessing the mind maps is your...
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally share those mind maps. I can put them on, actually there might even be one on the website, on the XMind. I'll make it public on the XMind website, but also I'll give you a copy, Mayan. Yeah.
The public link, you can share it with me, and I'll send it together with the recording link.
Sure. Okay, fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, and she says thank you. Great. So we are at the Q&A section. I don't see an open question at the moment. I will ask you something that came to mind. When you teach this model, what is the most common question that people ask? I mean, I've had several aha moments here, but
so look, it really depends where you're at in the stage. I find that a lot of the time exploratory testing is, where do I start? Or where do I start, and when do I know when to stop? Because as you can see, you could spend all day doing this, right? And you've got, you're on a iteration, or and you've got a fixed time. Maybe you've only got 3 or 4 hours before you have to release, and it's like, well, that looks great, Anne-Marie, but I've only got 20 minutes, right? Look, that is something. One of the biggest structures that you will have in doing exploratory testing is time. Like, if you've got 20 minutes to do exploratory testing, you focus on doing the best exploratory testing in that time. There's no point trying to do like all these different layers. You've got to think, well, where's the biggest risk, right? Where can I get the biggest bang from my buck? And I'll tell you a story. I did actually have this situation where I was testing a website, and it was in Dublin, and the client, I came in, he's like, yeah, I want you to test this website. This is a beautiful website, absolutely gorgeous website. I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And I was like, yeah, rolling my sleeves up, getting ready to start testing. And I said, oh, how much time do I have? And he said, oh, 10 minutes. We're going live in 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay. Right. Is there anything you particularly want me to look at? He says, no, we just want it to be perfect. I was like, okay, this is just a classic situation. There's not a lot of winning here, So I basically focused on, I said, well, what testing have you done already? And it turns out that developers were using Firefox, I think, for their, so I basically focused on a browser that they hadn't used a lot, and focused, I think it was Safari or something like that. I just basically focused on that sort of testing in that space and did what I could in there. But you are limited, and so a structure that is a totally valid structure, rather than thinking, oh, I haven't got enough time, you think, actually I've got 10 minutes of time, and let me think about how I can do my best job in 10 minutes. Or I should say, actually, this is really impossible for me to test, which was another option I could have done, is just handed it back to the client and just said, actually, that's, I don't feel comfortable testing in that time. I can't possibly find bugs for you, you know. So you can do that. I chose the less assertive way. You know, I chose to take the 10 minutes and do what I could. But you know, you work with what's best. And I think that's exploratory testing is very, very much about your individual choices and stuff like that. So you have to kind of start learning to be a little bit confident about owning that space a bit and sort of saying, okay, I've got this and I can do so much here, but you know, you're going to, it's sort of negotiations, you know.
I was going to ask another question. It was more regarding API testing. Of the API.
Yeah.
Does this necessarily mean for people that they need to be even more code savvy?
Look, you know, I used to think so with the API, but I found I had a total fear of the API. I didn't fully understand it because and it was really interesting because I'm an engineer by trade, and yet I had this kind of thing about APIs because they just kind of popped out halfway during my career, and suddenly everyone's using APIs. I'm like, what are these API things? And actually, you don't. What you do have to do, you don't have to be that technical to test APIs, especially in exploratory way, but you must understand the context between the GUI and how they're used. So open up that Chrome inspect and start exploring around, and don't be afraid to get totally confused. Best if you've got someone to help you, but it's okay. And I think it can be a really turn off for a lot of people. People kind of get really overwhelmed with all that stuff happening, and I can't, and it can be really overwhelming. So I think you have to be prepared to kind of have a little bit of discomfort there and feel it's okay. It's okay for me to not know everything, but you know, don't be scared to just kind of prod it and pull it. And for me, the classic thing is if I can pull that API, I don't need to fully understand the whole API, but if I can copy and paste it into something like Postman, I can start playing around with that without really knowing a lot about authentication, especially in this particular website. But you know, I can get around a few things there without actually knowing everything. And for me, that was a real liberator. It's like, okay, now I can start, you know, using some of my exploratory testing skills. And now I can start feeling a little bit confident about what I'm doing. And I can see how if I tweak this here, it affects the website. And oh, look, you know, I've done a put and look, it's appeared on the GUI, you know. So you start building this mental model when you associate the GUI with the API. And then once you've got that, then you're really over a major hurdle. So yeah, I think it's really, really useful tool to have. And especially because a lot of API testing is automated. Not a lot of people do exploratory work in that space. And there's a lot of potential problems in there, right? There's a lot of conflicting things that shouldn't actually be there. So it's a power tool for many exploratory testers.
Okay, we have a question here. Is there any enhancement on the room feature? Should you do the deer all the way from the beginning?
Look, you know, you could do the room like from day one. Like there's no stopping. Like if you wanted to take a mind map and describe the whole website, you could absolutely do that. I think what the challenge might be is your time. And I think you also mind map might get really, really big. Like once you start going down deep into stuff, your mind map's going to start looking a bit messy. And I personally would find that just distracting. And from a reporting perspective, there's too much information. And I don't think any manager I've worked with would want to look at all that information right there. So I would start dividing it pretty quickly into smaller chunks. But you know, there's no reason why you can't have a higher level of abstraction. I think even Xmind allows you to kind of dig into sort of sections and level it up. You know, there's lots of clever stuff there. But yeah, just be careful about the amount of information that goes into that mind map, because people will stop reading it.
Yes, we haven't.
That is, if you
haven't even dived into presenting your
That's if you're sharing it. If it's just for you, then just do what you like. It's fine. It's like only person going to see it is you, so you can swear and curse in it if you want.
I have another anonymous question. Can this approach be used with non-website software?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, I just use the API because I think it's a kind of fun next step. So I'm just trying to help people see how you can sort of take it further. But mobile apps, perfect. And, you could personally, there is a whole heap of different type of mnemonics out there, and I will see if I can share you the link, which basically, I think it's Delvar. I think he put together this image of like something like 100 different heuristics and testing heuristics and mnemonics that people can access. So if you do some type of testing, there's a heuristic or a mnemonic out there for you. Trust me. So I will see if I can find that link for you, because it's really, really awesome. It's great use. It might actually be in the slides, but I don't want to jump to the slides just in case something goes wrong.
That's okay. Well, we've actually completed the full hour now.
Right.
So someone asked if you can share the same mind map with another person. I'm sure you can, sharing permissions and stuff there.
Oh yeah, look, go feel free to use that. I mean, the key thing is I would never, just use that as you like. You can amend it, tailor it. I would ask that you give attribution for the geoheuristic to me, because that's my little baby. But apart from that, just use it as you like. And I'd love to hear how you found it useful. I would love to hear some stories about people who've actually found it's been useful, maybe training other people, or just in themselves personally, it's helped them strengthen their exploratory testing. So please share a story. I'd love to hear it.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's our time. Oh, thank you very much, Anne-Marie. That was a
That's all right.
Despite all the technical difficulties, I think it was.
I know.
I
don't know. Whatever. It's life at this stage, isn't it? All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. All the best. See you, Marion. Bye.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.